Hi there and welcome to My Week. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Christy McDonald. Lots to get to this week. The fallout from a proposed budget cutting hundreds of millions of dollars in programs that help the Great Lakes. We're going to give you a closer look at projects you may not realize impact our economy. Also coming up, what Wayne County Exec Warren Evans is saying about the jail project now. Also, why schools on the chopping block for poor performance may not shut down after all. And from Obamacare to Trump care, the debate over scrapping the Affordable Care Act. It is all coming up for you on My Week. So let's bring in our My Week contributors who help us with a balanced look at all of this. Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Hey guys, so you guys all have power, right?
I do.
I do not have power. The mighty wins.
We are the most powerful people.
You know, I think I walked myself. I think I walked myself right into that. So if you're watching us at home tonight, we know hundreds of thousands of people.
We have powers you can't imagine.
All right. Well, we have a lot to get to tonight. So let's start with the changes in Washington that are causing the biggest uproar around Michigan, the ones that impact the Great Lakes. Potential cutbacks in EPA programs, gutting the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding from $300 million to $10 million, and slashing money from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA as it's called. We're not just talking about stopping Asian carp from flopping into boats and algae from Lake Eerie seeping into the water supply. The Great Lakes are 20% of the world's freshwater supply. And checking the economics on this, the Great Lakes provide over 1.5 million jobs and $62 billion in wages. And the research folks that found those numbers, their Sea Grant program could be canceled under President Trump's proposals. So there is really a lot to get to and impacting where we live specifically in the Great Lakes region. I'm going to start with you, Stephen, because you wrote a column this week about some of these proposed changes and what some of your thoughts were on this.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, this is an administration that doesn't think much of the EPA generally, and that's why they put Scott Pruitt in charge of it. And there may be legitimate debates to have about what the extent of EPA regulation should be, what the balance between environmental protection and industry should be. I think everyone should be open to having that debate. But here, you're talking about a program that's spent $2.2 billion over two previous administrations, the Obama administration and the George W. Bush administration, has made a tremendous difference in cleaning up messes that industry made, mostly along the Great Lakes, cleaning up PCBs, making sure that the algae levels are at the right level. No one has any legitimate criticism of this program. I mean, that's not the thing that we're hearing. No one's saying, well, this didn't work or this is wasteful. It's just a philosophical objection to the idea of doing this, which I don't quite understand. Congress passed an extension for this program in December. The Republican Congress did. George W. Bush started this is not a Republican idea. It's just a dumb one.
Well, it shouldn't either be an either or, you know, cleaning up the environment or industry. It should be something that goes in tandem because it makes a lot of economic sense here as well, Nolan.
I mean, it took a long time to get these in particular the Great Lake Restoration funds in the budget. That was a fight, a low priority for a number of years. Finally got in, and I think keeping the money, that money and other money for Great Lakes protections will test the clout of the Michigan congressional delegation. They're going to have to work together. Fortunately, I think they're better positioned in Michigan than a lot of other states because the Republican and Democrats in the delegation get along better and work together better and have had a longer history on automotive issues than perhaps some other state delegations. This is about budget cuts, and there are going to be a lot of budget cuts. We've been overspending our revenue, and so it's going to pit, you know, state against state. I would think the Great Lakes would have a higher priority than some bullet train in California, but if you look at the region we're talking about, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, all very good to Republicans in the last election. And I think that's going to come into play as they consider where to make their budget
you've got a
cuts.
pretty powerful delegation in Ohio that's pushing back against this as well. And this is something that every year when this funding comes up, especially the GLRI, that they've had to fight to make sure they get the full 300. You know, we've talked about Lake Eerie and the algae blooms there, and we've talked about Asian carp, but we've done a lot of Great Lakes programming here on Detroit Public Television. And I wanted to give people a sense of some of the smaller projects that this funding goes to. And I want to show you one that's happening. It's called Eerie Marsh, and it's part of wetlands in southeast Michigan. And it is a 5-year project that the Nature Conservancy is working on. And that's where some of the funding from the GLRI is going and also from NOAA. So go ahead and take a look.
My name is Paul Pachowski, and I'm a charter boat captain out on Lake Erie. I go out fishing every day. I love to fish. I love to be on the water. I'm not a happy person unless I can see or touch the water.
It's impossible to separate fishing from the culture and economy of the Great Lakes, especially for those like Captain Paul, who make a living taking anglers onto Lake Erie. But declines in fish populations have made it harder and harder to catch the limit.
Back when I started this 30 years ago, anybody could go out there and catch their walleyes, just throw a lure over the side of the boat, put the rod over your shoulder, don't even pay attention, and the rod will jerk down and you'd reel up a fish. Now, in order to get your fish, you gotta be pretty much on your game.
Key to getting fish numbers up in western Lake Erie is restoring coastal wetlands. Over the decades, we've traded coastal development for habitat to the detriment of our economy and recreation. These days, 11% of all remaining wetlands in southeast Michigan are contained in the Nature Conservancy's Eerie Marsh Preserve. So it's here that a major project is underway to restore what little habitat remains to maximize the benefit for all.
Coastal wetlands provide some storm dampening capacity, flood control. They filter water, and water that flows through them actually comes out cleaner once it's been through a wetland. So they provide clean water, they provide clean air, and they provide habitat for fish and wildlife.
Earthen dikes built more than 70 years ago disconnected the marsh from Lake Erie. The site is being re-engineered to re-establish that connection.
The purpose of the water control structure is to allow fish access into the marsh to provide additional spawning opportunity. And the fish passage structure will allow them free access to come and go and do their thing. Coming into the preserve, into the diked wetland, there's more vegetation available. It provides a protected area from both predators and from the natural environment, meaning high winds and wave energy that can harm some eggs or young fish. So it provides foraging habitat, just a protected site for fish to use.
Another obstacle to restoring fish habitat at Eerie Marsh is Phragmites, a plant that's familiar to most. You're likely to see it growing on the sides of roads and highways. But even though we see Phragmites at every turn, it's not a native species. Like Asian carp, it's an invader to the Great Lakes. And at Eerie Marsh, Phragmites has room to take over. Growing so densely, it creates a green wall, literally forcing out all other life. This in turn forces site managers to go to great lengths to eradicate this pernicious plant.
We're spraying with herbicide, then we're either mowing or burning to get rid of the standing dead plant material. And then the key component is really to flood those areas. And the new pumps and water control structure and distribution canal will allow us to flood all the areas that are invaded by Phragmites up to about 2 or 3 feet, really drown them out to make sure they're dead. And then when we draw that water down, there's native species in the seed bank, and those will spring right up.
The rarity and importance of coastal wetland habitat to the Great Lakes sparked a $2.5 million investment into this site by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Given that Eerie Marsh represents the 11% of wetlands in southeast Michigan, and as such is one of the largest left on the Lake Erie shoreline, we thought it would have significant benefits to restoring this area.
These kind of habitats can bounce back really fast. The habitat response is almost immediate. I've seen projects where we're under construction and water comes in a rainstorm and the birds are already there.
With a little bit of investment at this point, we can really get a big bang for our buck, and these areas just need a little push in the right direction before they spring back and they regain some of their historical quality and benefits.
And for lifelong fishermen of Lake Erie like Captain Paul, that can't come soon enough.
Lake Erie only has 2% of the water, but it produces 50% of the fish for human consumption that come out of the Great Lakes. That's a big number, and that's why this area is so important to not just protect, but to help flourish.
So it's just one look at just some of the programs that are happening all around the Great Lakes Basin, and you can find out more at greatlakesnow.org. Check it out. We'll also have a link on our website at myweek.org. Before we leave this discussion, though, Nolan, I want to talk a little bit about, you said, look, we've got to cut some fat from the budget, but where President Trump is starting to put a lot of the resource and a lot of the money that he wants to put in, what do you feel about that in terms of defense he's talking about?
Well, I do think we need a defense build-up. I think we've let our forces and our equipment age. That would actually be good for Michigan, since so much of the defense industry is based here. Whether $54 billion is the figure, I don't know. This has all just been put on the table, and there's going to be a lot of horse trading, a lot of bargaining coming out. And again, I hope that the Michigan congressional delegation is positioned to fight for Michigan.
All right.